Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and today I'm going to be talking to you about obsession. Alright, so the reason why I want to talk to you guys about obsession is because I feel like obsession is a lot more common than people make it out to be. Like there's kind of this stigma sort of situation going on where we think that if someone has an obsession with someone or something, that there's some perverted wacko, like a Jeffrey Dahmer type, like lowering lotion in a basket down to some girl in a well. But I think that obsession is actually a lot more homegrown than that. It's so taboo. Hardly anyone ever really wants to admit to the fact that they've had an obsession. Now, for me personally, the information that I'm going to share here in this video is actually all based from personal experience. I've had two obsessions with another individual in my life, once when I was 12 and once when I was 20. And what I noticed about those two times is that those times in my life were very chaotic and very transitional. So in a sense, I think the obsession itself kind of was a way for me to focus my attention away from the very, very difficult situations that I was facing in life. And I'm inclined to think that if someone has obsessions every now and again, that this could be a lot of the reason why they come up. Now, on another note, there are people that get chronic obsessions, and this is probably due to some kind of imbalance of chemicals in the brain or, something of that nature. So this video is less so for someone who has chronic obsessions, like someone who has OCD or, some other medical thing like that. For that, you'd probably want to go see a psychiatrist. But this is for someone who's otherwise normal and healthy, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're hit with an obsession. And so I think the best thing to do when this is the case is you have to get a really deep understanding of what an obsession actually is. And this is my take on obsession based on my own personal experiences from when I was 12 and when I was 20. Alright, so to really understand what obsession is, we have to get a really strong handle on what thoughts are and what emotions are, because obsessions occur solely in the thoughts and the emotions. Like, it gives an illusion that it's something that's happening out in the real world because your object of obsession is out in the real world, but it is something that is wholly self-contained inside your internal experiences, and it wholly has to do with thoughts and emotions. Alright, so first let's look at what a thought is. What a thought is it's either an internal dialogue or an internal picture. And these are usually kind of fuzzy and sort of imitate the real thing. So if I think of a statement in my head and I just say that in my head, like the dog ran outside, I can sort of, in a very muffled sort of internal voice, be able to hear the dog ran outside. Or when it comes to visual pictures, I could actually get a visual image of the dog running outside. And those are the two main ways that thoughts actually occur, is through these hazy visual images or hazy sort of internal dialogues. Now, the important thing to realize when it comes to thoughts is that you have very, very little control over your thoughts. And to show you this, I want you to do a little practice, a little just 30-second thing. Go ahead and pause the video, and I want you for 30 seconds to try to stop your thoughts. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and set the timer for 30 seconds and go, and then you can come back to the video afterward. Alright, good. Alright, so did you notice that it was incredibly hard to stop your thoughts for even 2 seconds? Well, this is because we actually have very, very little control over our thoughts. Our thoughts just kind of bubble up from the subconscious without our say. Now, certain environmental factors can trigger some thoughts, or you could even try to will some thoughts, but most thoughts come up of their own accord or in relation to some other thought that's come up by its own accord. So that's important to realize about thoughts. Alright, so let's look at emotions now. Alright, what an emotion is an emotion is a first-hand experience of the thoughts that you think. Now, oftentimes we think that emotions are actually caused by external circumstances, but this isn't true. Because it's all about the meaning that our thoughts put on those external circumstances that cause us to have an emotion. So, for example, if our partner leaves clothes on the floor after we had just cleaned it up, we might put a meaning on that, oh, it's because they don't care about my contributions in the household, and that thought will actually cause the anger. It's not the actual clothes on the floor that's causing the anger, it's the clothes on the floor that triggered the thought that causes the anger. So emotions are first-hand experiences of our thoughts as felt as sensations in the body. So if we understand that about thoughts, that they're not controllable and they're like little statements or pictures in our mind, and that emotions are the reactions to those thoughts, what implications does that have for obsession? Alright, so I wrote down a working definition of what I think obsession is. I'm just going to read it right off the paper because I want to make sure that I get it right. Alright, so an obsession is where the mind produces thoughts that trigger particular neurochemicals that cause a pleasant sensation in the emotional body. So what's happening is that your mind is actually triggering different thoughts in order to get you to feel pleasant emotions. That's all that's happening with an obsession. So your mind is thinking a thought of a person, place, thing, or idea that you're obsessed with, and what happens is neurochemicals are released and you feel a pleasurable sensation in the body. And so because you feel these pleasurable sensations in your body, and because you have very limited control over your thoughts in the first place, your mind will just keep producing the same thoughts over and over and over and over again so that you can feel that sensation. Alright, so let's give an example. Let's say that I have an obsession with some celebrity like Johnny Depp or someone like that. And whenever my mind thinks thoughts about Johnny Depp, all of a sudden I'm feeling these pleasant sensations in my emotional body. And so my mind just keeps producing thoughts about Johnny Depp and keeps producing thoughts about Johnny Depp, and it continues on and on and on in a kind of snowball sort of fashion. Now it's important to keep in mind, if I'm obsessing with Johnny Depp, that Johnny Depp actually has nothing to do with my obsession. It's all about getting that neurochemical fix. It's all about those pleasurable sensations that my mind is producing so that I can feel that way. And so in a sense, obsessions always seek to pull you out of the real world and kind of trap you in your internal world. And in a way, this is a kind of self-medication that's going on. So if you notice, this is a lot of the way that drug addiction happens, or any kind of addiction. Basically, the drug gets a trigger for a pleasurable sensation, and therefore you have to go out and you have to find more and more of that drug, and people use it to self-medicate and to avoid their life situations. Obsession works in the same way. So when you have an obsession with someone, the thought of that person, place, or thing or idea that's causing that obsession is the drug, it's the trigger, but it doesn't have anything to do with that person, place, thing, or idea. It just has to do with the fact that that happens to be what triggers those chemicals in your body. So the best way to define obsession is that it's a thought addiction. You are addicted to thinking a particular thought. Now the problem with this is it comes with a big illusion along with it. So in a sense, it's better than using drugs because you're not going to get addicted to an external substance, but it gives you the feeling like you're addicted to something external. Now, because of the circular nature of an obsession, the fact that you're obsessed with a thought, thinking that thought is going to give you a little hit of pleasure, but it's never going to be satisfying for you. I would relate obsession to being like, and I don't mean to be graphic, but kind of like if you were to work yourself halfway up to orgasm and then stop. And then work yourself halfway up to orgasm and then stop. So there's an unsatisfactory nature to the obsession cycle. And it gives this illusion that when you achieve the proper relationship to your object of obsession, be it a person, place, thing, or idea, when you achieve that ideal state of relationship to them, that it's going to actually be satisfying, that it's actually going to be a relief to you. Because what an obsession is, it's a complete lack of relief. It is this circular kind of snowball effect where you just have to think more and more and more about that particular thought in order to get the same level of pleasure that you got before. And it goes around and around and around and around, and you never really get a sense of satisfaction from it. The obsession is the best that it's going to get. that is the best feeling, and it's by its own nature unsatisfactory. So that's kind of a hard bullet to bite. So think of obsession as a substance addiction, but it's that you're addicted to substances that are native to your own body. But also at the same time, it's going to steal you away from life in the way that addiction does. Because you could be going out there and actually doing things to build your life up or to benefit you in some way, but you're stuck in your head having to think this thought and being addicted to thinking a thought and clinging on to a thought. Alright, but I'm going to go ahead and I'll tell you about my own personal experiences with obsession, and both of mine were with individual people. I never had an obsession with things, and I guess sometimes ideas I kind of get obsessed with, but those are fairly mild. Those are just kind of like things that I'm interested in. But when I was 12 years old, I had my first obsession. And what was happening in my life, and I didn't relate the circumstances of my life to my obsession because I was very young and I just didn't know. I just thought that, oh, this person and I were meant to be kind of thing. So there was this kid that rode my bus, and I was just, head over heels for him. I had a bit of a crush on him. And what was happening in my life was that my parents were splitting up, and, everything that I had known before as normal, was no longer normal. And so that normal crush developed into an obsession where I really wasn't able to think of anything else but him for, it was probably a good 6-month period of time. And I did a lot of embarrassing things, like looking his phone number up in the phone book and calling him, or just bugging him in general and just getting on his nerves. And it was embarrassing to me. But at the same time, it's like there was a definite crutch that I was using to get through that time. So essentially, when my entire life was kind of crumbling down around me, it was kind of like my life raft, that feeling, that crush, and being able to think about him and the possibilities of having a relationship with him or whatnot. That was really, really helpful for me getting through that time. However, at the same time, it had absolutely nothing to do with him as a person. He is just kind of an unfortunate person that ended up being the object of my obsession. But the obsession itself is what helped me sort of navigate my way through that time, because there were not very many positive emotions to be had. There was no comfort that I had in the situation because everything was in such a state of upheaval. And, my mom was dating this guy who I really didn't like, and he was really just a negative influence in general. And, everything that I had once known was no longer, and I was moving my house. And so my fantasies in relation to that obsession reflected a lot of family theme kind of stuff. I would think, oh, it would be nice to one day grow old with him, and, a lot of stability-based fantasies. And so, in a sense, the obsession itself showed me a lot about what I wanted as a person during that time that I was missing from my life. But it also gave me a way to navigate through that scenario and to be able to actually artificially produce positive emotions where there was no ability to produce positive emotions otherwise. The second situation was when I was in college. I was 20 years old, and I was really quite alone in the world. I had been with the same guy since I was 16 years old, so we had almost a 4-year relationship, and it ended really, really terribly. And essentially I was in the town that I live in now, but as a college student I didn't have really a connection to any family, and really kind of shallow connections to friends. And so I was really all alone in the world, being with the guy that I was with before, and how bad things were. He was always in and out of jail for a lot of petty things, and I was always having to worry about the stress and instability associated with his lifestyle, always having to scrounge together money to get him out of the situations that he was in. And after 4 years of this, it had really reached a breaking point, and it ended very, very badly. And so during that time, I developed a crush on an older male authority figure of mine. And basically, I started to project onto him what it was that I wanted in my own life. And so, in a sense, it was still really embarrassing to me because I know that, he was probably very much able to tell what was going on with me psychologically, just in terms of having an obsession. So that was really, really embarrassing. But he seemed to handle it really well and be very understanding because he sort of knew about my life situation. And, basically I was able to project upon him where I needed to go in life. So it gave me an object of obsession to focus my attention on and away from the relationship that I was so invested in. And so it enabled me to break through that and enabled me to actually move in the direction of what I actually wanted in life, which was more stability and to be with somebody who is more intellectually compatible with me and a host of other things. So in a sense, if you don't get caught up in the content of your obsession, and if you don't actually seek out the object of your obsession, what you can do is you can use the obsession to your benefit to be able to move your life in a different direction. So essentially, when an obsession comes up, a lot of people tend to think that, oh my gosh, it's because I'm crazy, or, what the heck is going on with my brain? I'm a creepy person, like, why am I having this obsession? But those are very unhelpful ways to think about it. What an obsession is really trying to tell you, if an obsession comes up out of nowhere and it's not a chemical imbalance thing, is that there are situations in your life that need to be changed. And essentially, the obsession itself is going to enable you to kind of have a refuge to steal away to whenever things get too difficult emotionally to do so. But it will also enable you to know exactly what it is that you want and go for that. Now again, I want to reiterate that an obsession has nothing to do with the object of obsession. So a lot of times when someone has an obsession, they think, oh, if only I were with this person and then my life would be perfect and, everything would be great. That's not the case. In fact, that's probably going to cause you a lot more issues. But what you can do is you can look at the qualities that you perceive in that person or place or thing or idea that you like, and you can start moving toward those things in your own life without focusing on that person, place, thing, or idea that you are obsessed with. Alright, so I'm going to give you a list of things that are going to help you to come to terms with your obsession and to really be able to use it to benefit you in the best way possible. Alright, so here goes. Here's the list. Number 1, be honest with yourself about having an obsession. The number one thing is to actually admit to yourself that you have an obsession. There's a lot of stigma associated with obsession, so this is difficult. So you might want to brush it off like, oh, it's just a crush, or it's not that bad. If you're thinking about a person, place, thing, or object for over a quarter of your time, you have an obsession. Alright, number 2, once you have actually admitted to yourself that you have an obsession, you want to trust the obsession. Now there's an important distinction that I want to make here. Trusting the obsession doesn't mean that you trust the content of the obsession. The content of the obsession is by its own nature very illusory, and it's going to lead you into at least embarrassment and at most a restraining order and all kinds of other crazy stuff. So don't go for the object of your obsession, but learn to trust that the obsession is coming up for a reason. Remember, as I said before, obsession comes up to lead you in a new direction in life and to help you achieve more balance in your life and in your psychology. Number 3, and I think this one is probably going to be the most helpful thing actually, is to practice mindfulness meditation. What you're doing in mindfulness meditation is you are putting all of your focus and attention on your breath or some other object of focus for your meditation, and by its very nature it's going to take some attention away from your object of obsession, and you can get a little bit more clarity about the situation, and it will also kind of weaken the thoughts that you have, because you have to be constantly thinking a thought to keep it strong in your mind. And so if you lose sight of the thought, even artificially speaking through meditation, it sort of weakens it a little bit. Alright, number 4, don't seek a relationship to your object of obsession beyond what is normal for just everyday interaction. So for example, if you are obsessed with a person, don't seek out to hang out with them, or don't try to get to know them better. If you have a class with them or if you work with them, just keep it to the basic things like that you would normally do in the day. Also, if you have an obsession with an object, don't buy any more of it than is normal. So for example, if you have an obsession with M&Ms, and I'm just throwing it out there, and really this is nothing I can relate to because I've never been obsessed with an object before, don't buy more than a pack of M&Ms a day. Don't buy a whole carton of them, kind of thing. So you just want to keep it fairly moderate with what you're doing. Don't just go out of your way and avoid it altogether. Just try to live normally in normal relationship to them as you would with any other thing in the environment, even though you have an obsession. All right, number 5. So I talked about earlier practicing mindfulness meditation, and in a way that's like distracting yourself away from the thoughts and emotions that you're experiencing during your obsession. But in this bit of advice, I'm going to say to practice mindfulness on the thoughts and emotions themselves that go into contributing to your obsession. And so you want to get really present to what emotions you're actually trying to feel during this obsession, and then also figure out what thoughts you're having that actually trigger them. You want to become really, really conscious to what these fantasies and these thoughts actually entail. Because then what you can do is you can say, oh, maybe I feel really, really relaxed in relation to my object of obsession when I think these thoughts. So maybe relaxation is what I'm looking for. And so you can find other ways to actually experience relaxation that doesn't have to do with your object of obsession, and kind of allows you another outlet for experiencing that emotion. Or you can even look at the things that you're thinking about your object of obsession, and like, let's say for example, that you project upon your object of obsession that they really, really like comic books. Maybe they don't, but maybe that's what you're projecting upon them. Maybe you can go try to read some comic books to see if that might help. Alright, number 6, and this one is really, really important. Don't judge yourself. As I've said, there's a lot of stigma associated with having an obsession, and it really is very counterproductive if you start thinking of yourself as this bad, evil, creepy person with an obsession. I think obsessions come up as sort of a balancing mechanism to get you back on track with life. Unless, of course, you have some kind of chemical imbalance, then you have to actually address the imbalance with a psychiatrist. But essentially, if you're just a regular, average, everyday person, and you get an obsession that springs up, it's coming up for a reason. And the reason isn't because you have some bad character flaw, it's because your psyche is trying to find a way to balance you out. Alright, number 7, and this one is kind of a practice that you can do. You can get out a piece of paper and you can write down all of the traits that you think that your object of obsession has. Now, it doesn't matter if they actually objectively have these traits, but it's mostly what you understand about them. Like, for example, when I was 20 and I had my obsession, I basically had projected upon him that maybe when he was younger, he liked to listen to punk rock music. I have no idea if that's true. It was just a thought that I had, and I enjoyed the thought. And so you just write that down, enjoys punk rock music, even if it's not true, because essentially if it's going on in your mind, then it's important to why you're having the obsession. And essentially your thoughts and your fantasies in relation to the obsession will be able to tell you a lot of information about yourself. It won't tell you anything about the other person, but it'll tell you about yourself. Alright, number 8, and this one's kind of tricky, but very important. Don't disengage from life. Now, on one hand, that's essentially what obsession is doing. Because you're addicted to a thought, what you're essentially doing is you're walling yourself into your internal world of thoughts and emotions and disengaging from the external world. Now, it has kind of that illusion that it has to do with the external world because your object of obsession occurs there, but essentially you're not experiencing the reality of that external world. You are completely stuck in your thoughts and in your emotions. So it's very, very important to actually be making changes in your life while you're having this obsession. Otherwise, you're just going to be running around in circles in your head over and over and over, and you're not going to be getting anywhere. You're just going to be getting these little flashes of pleasure all day, and that's going to be enough to keep you inside of your own mind. But it's not going to actually change the scenario in your outer life that's going to enable you to move past the obsession. And that's one of the main keys to breaking the addiction to the thoughts that you have. Alright, number 9, and this one relates to the one that I just said, make an action plan for things that you want to change in your life. You know, think about, how do I want things to be for me health-wise? What kind of food do I want to eat? Do I want to go back to school? Do I like the job that I have? Did I just have some kind of tragedy happen in my life? How am I going to rebuild from that? You want to really get that down on paper and out in front of you. That way you can start to make progress and you can monitor your progress. And that's going to be very, very important, because essentially that is what an obsession is trying to point you in the direction of anyway. It's trying to tell you that you don't want the things in your life that are happening right now, and that you want some other alternative scenario to be happening. And last but not least, and I'm going to reiterate it, don't focus on your object of obsession. Don't get hemmed into the illusion that the object of obsession is going to bring you happiness. It will not. Nor will your obsession ever bring you satisfaction. And that's a really hard bullet for someone with an obsession to bite. That your object of obsession cannot bring you happiness, and that the obsession itself will only bring you around in circles, and that the pleasure that you experience from the obsession is as good as it gets. So you really want to make systematic efforts at getting over the obsession by trusting it, validating it, and really being able to engage in life and make your life better, so that you're not just adrift in a sea of unhappiness and clinging to a little piece of wood that your obsession is to keep yourself afloat. And that's kind of what I relate an obsession to. And so it's effective for that, but you actually want to get off on dry land, because you cannot survive in a sea of unhappiness forever. But as your life improves, and as you're able to bring yourself into a new situation, no matter how scary that may be, your obsession will weaken more and more and more, and you'll eventually be able to get completely over it, not by repressing it down, but by really allowing it to hit you without getting engaged with it, or without trying to resist it away from you. And then you can go on and you can live a happy, healthy, happy life. Like for me, both of my obsessions lasted about 6 months, and now my life in both of those situations moved into a much better direction than it would have moved had I not actually focused on what I wanted out of the obsession, aside from the object of my obsession. Alright, so that's all I have. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and click the subscribe button below and give it a big thumbs up. Otherwise, leave your comments below for me so that I can answer them on my next Q&A Wednesdays. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, keep becoming more you.